So it's great to look out and see all these beautiful faces this morning, and to know our friends are joining us on Facebook as well, because we have a miracle worker in the back of the room. Did you know that? Mike, yay, let's give him a hand. He's our camera guy, and he had to make it happen this morning, so bless you. I did a little, we're doing a series of talks on what to remember to be happy. And so this is part 2 of what to remember to be happy today. We have at least one more. We'll see. I've got a lot of material. And whatever we don't get to today, we'll do next Sunday and maybe even the following Sunday. We'll see. But today is a little bit different. We're going to try to shorten things a little bit, just because we have one Sunday a year, we have what we call our annual membership meeting, and that's after the service today. And of course, we have to fit everything in before we do bingo. So it makes for a very full day, and we love it. So just so that you understand, we'll try to move things along a little bit today. I did a little test with Barry earlier this week. I'm calling it the happiness test. And so I asked him, what is the opposite of joy? And he said, sadness. And I said, and what's the opposite of depression? He said, elation. I said, and how about the opposite of woe? And he said, giddy up. And I said, you passed. Last week, when we were talking about what to remember to be happy, I brought in the teachings of an American spiritual master teacher by the name of, I called him Dafri John, but he had many different names over his years. But he wrote about what to remember to be happy, and it really was becoming more aware of and learning to be appreciative of the mystery of life and of God. And so the 3 things that we were going to remember to be happy last week were, 1, to remember and to feel the mystery, and even to breathe that in at moments. That was 1. And then 2 was remember to feel that you are more than what you look like. And then the 3rd one was remember that you are the mystery. So really, really powerful teachings that I have carried with me for many, many years. Do I have it down? No. A young man decided he was going to challenge a priest. He said, hey, Father, you got it all wrong about this God stuff. God doesn't exist. And I ought to know. Well, the priest said, well, why is that, son? And the young man said, well, when I was ice fishing in the Arctic, far from the nearest village, a blizzard blew up with wind and blinding snow. I was a goner. So I got down on my knees and I prayed real hard, begging God for help. And did he help? Asked the priest. Heck no, said the man. God didn't lift a finger. Some Eskimo appeared out of nowhere and showed me the way. So I'm wondering, do you have Yugen? And that's not some kind of newfangled yogurt that you have in your refrigerator. I came across this. Maybe you've seen this before. Yugen. A profound, mysterious sense of the beauty of the universe that triggers a deep emotional response. Maybe you've experienced that before. I've had that experience. And it's a mystery. Fran, who's one of our new members, just as of last week, she has turned me, you need to be a friend of Fran's on Facebook because she really posts good stuff. And she got me really excited about Mary Oliver, the poet. And certainly I had heard some of her stuff before, but now I'm seeing it a lot. And the other day I noticed this one that she calls Hallelujah that I'd like to share with you this morning. Mary Oliver, Hallelujah. Everyone should be born into this world happy and loving everything. But in truth, it rarely works that way. For myself, I have spent my life clamoring toward it. Hallelujah, anyway, I'm not where I started. And have you too been trudging like that sometimes? Almost forgetting how wondrous the world is and how miraculously kind some people can be. And have you too decided that probably nothing important is ever easy? Not, say, for the first 60 years anyway. Hallelujah, I'm 60 now, and even a little more than 60. And some days I feel I have wings. I decided, in Unity, we like to think of ourselves as the marriage between, or as a marriage, and not just Unity, but the New Thought movement. And we like to think of ourselves as that place where science and religion can come together. That we really honor research and statistics, and while we also honor the mystical and the mysterious. So I came across, actually, University of Pennsylvania has created a research program on authentic happiness. And so I found there's lots of stuff. You know how websites are. You can just, you click on something and then you're gone. You go someplace where you can go there for an hour and come back and find another place to go. And I found what I'm going to call the spiritual version of 7 habits of happy people. Because one of the things that I have found, though I consider myself a fairly happy person, there are times when I get a little something caught up there in my noggin and I don't want to let go of it. Anybody else have that experience? Oh, good. I'm not the only one. And I will create a story like you have never heard before. And of course I wouldn't share it with you because that's my deep, dark secret in there about how I've been wronged and how awful the world is. So-and-so did something to me, and I'm happy, but I can also get caught up in a story that can make me unhappy. And maybe it's just that there's a problem that needs to be solved, and I'm not going to be happy until I get it solved. Anybody else? It's like there's this little devil in there that's saying, fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it. You gotta fix it. You gotta fix it. Fix it. So one of the 7 things, the first of the 7 habits of happy people, spiritual version, is focusing on our strengths. How often do you do that? Or how often are you thinking, well, I'm not very good at that. Well, I didn't get that done this week. And the importance of focusing on, rather than what's wrong with us, but what's right with us and what's right in the world as well. We so often get stuck on what we think we can't do or what we're not good at. So how important focusing on our strengths is. Is that something that you think you can do? Not sure. Number 2, and I think this is really interesting because when we think about how many times have you heard how important gratitude is? So many times that you're like, heard it, been there, done it, don't need to do it anymore. And we even tend to think that there is an outer reason why we express gratitude, like it's so important to let people know how grateful we are for them. And yes, that is important. But did I realize that that also makes me happy, not just you happy? That is one of the habits of happy people. Here's another one that gives me the same thought. We know how important it is to be kind, and we hear about random acts of kindness and, I'm going to open doors for people, and I'm going to pay it forward and pay for your coffee. You're going to come behind me and your coffee will already be paid for, and doing that for other people. But guess what? It leads to our own happiness as well when we're generous and when we're kind. Did you know that? Maybe we just kind of fell upon it by accident. I did, in fact, the other day, I just thought of somebody and I just sent them a little message, and then we were engaged for a while. And I thought, wow, that was a boost. It was a boost for me, and I knew it was a boost for the other person too. So how much being kind and generous isn't just about being a good person in the world. It's about raising our own sense of well-being and happiness. Here's where we go a little bit deeper, because the 4th habit of happy people is spiritual engagement or meaning, having meaning in our life. And there's a lot of things that fall under that. Forgiveness is one of them. And here again, I know that so many of us were like, gratitude, yeah. Kindness, yeah. Forgiveness, oh, no way. And I love it. I just was thinking this morning about, we don't talk much or quote much from the Bible, but there's still some good stuff in there, y'all. And I love it when, the guys that are following Jesus ask, how many times do I have to forgive? 7 times? Like, that should be enough, shouldn't it? And what is his response? No, 70 times 7. Which, looking at that metaphysically, he was saying, you keep on doing it infinitely. And it really is a very foundational message of many, many spiritual teachings. And so let's make it more accessible to us. Because the word forgiveness seems to have a lot of baggage. and we start thinking that it's for the other person again, when in reality it's a very simple letting go. And she says, it's simple, just let go. Right? When was the last time that it was simple to let go? I just got done saying how my mind gets stuck on something and wants to fix it before I can move on or be happy. But that is where our true freedom comes, and I've tried it and I've practiced it. Because there are times when I have to forgive the entire world. Do you? Or do you just say, screw the world. I'm just going to do my thing, and, it's going to do what it's going to do. And that's true. It is going to do what it's going to do. And I can let it go. I can let it all go. How in the world can I do that? Well, one, I want to be happy. Do you want to be happy? No. No, I think that we could all use a little bit more happiness. And as long as we are focused on what is going on in the outer world, that will be a challenge for us. But challenge is good. Actually, it's one of the things we're going to talk about in a minute on another habit. So challenge is good. So it doesn't necessarily mean, because Barry and I, we're the opposite when it comes to news. He wants to know everything that's going on in the world. And I don't want to know what's going on in the world. I want to know just enough so I can know, yeah, it's still totally insane out there. Nothing has changed. But when I do focus on that, then I have to do my inner work. Then I have to work on letting it go, because I can't change it. I'm getting into some of the other pieces of this, but Dr. Brené Brown suggests giving up what we think we're supposed to be and to embrace who we really are. And that works for who I think you should be as well, to give that up. And for those of you who are in a relationship, a committed lifelong relationship, you get a lot of practice at that. Don't we, Barry?
Yes, we do.
I'd like to share, before we get off the topic of letting it go, there's a story of a Czechoslovakian woman named Alice Herz-Sommer. Alice was a hugely talented pianist and the oldest known survivor of the Holocaust. During World War II, Alice, who was Jewish, her husband and her young son were imprisoned in a concentration camp. Her husband died in the camp, along with most of her extended family and friends. When the Nazi commanders over the camp discovered that Alice's capability that she was a musician, that she could play the piano, they forced her to give piano concerts. She knew that her life and the life of her young son depended on it, so she did so, of course. Alice and her son survived the camps and went on to live productive lives afterwards. Alice lived till she was 110. And all those who knew her said that she radiated joy. She never developed a hatred for the Nazi regime that took her family and friends. She spoke often of the beauty of life and how she was so grateful for every moment she had. Oh, there they are. 1, focusing on our strengths. 2, expressing gratitude. 3, being kind and generous for our own happiness. 4, spiritual engagement and meaning. 5, reframe our thinking toward optimism. And 6, purpose. And we'll talk about that in a minute. 7, connecting. So I wanted to share this slide. We live inside our minds so much, said Bear. Make it as safe and nice and kind a place to be as possible. Wow, sit with that a moment. Yeah, breathe that in. And then some of you may be familiar with Abraham. The new word that she's using is pivoting. Have you heard of pivoting? If I want to feel good, if I start feeling bad, then I can simply say, I want to feel good. And that process of repeating that over and over again is that opening that we need to make that pivot or to begin to make that shift to feeling better. It's so easy to focus on the negative, isn't it? We've talked, in fact, we did a whole Sunday lesson at one point about how that we are made that way. We were made that way so that we would survive. And now we don't have all of the reasons that we needed at one time to survive, but we still hang on to, being very vigilant and anxious at times about how we can be hurt. So this idea of reframing our thinking towards optimism, well, the New Thought movement has really gotten a bad rap over the last few years because we are very focused on looking for the good and staying positive and putting our energy on what is good. And then the psychologist came out and said, but you could be toxic with that positivity. And it is true. We don't want to deny when we've had an experience that hurts or that we're angry about. We need to acknowledge it and then move on and then let go. But yeah, there is a thing. That is a thing, toxic positivity. In Unity, we started to call it, or in the New Thought movement, we started to call it spiritual bypassing. So I'm a spiritual person. I'm above all that. I don't get angry. No, that's not real because you are still a human. As long as you're here, you're a human. And we have human experiences. But I love what Charles Swindoll wrote about. He's the author of the book, The Grace Awakening. And you may have heard this before. It's one of my favorites. The longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude is more important than the past, than education, money, circumstances, failures, and excesses, and much more than what other people think, say, or do. And he goes on and on and on, but he ends, I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me, and 90% how I react to it. That is so powerful when we begin to recognize our ability to choose or to pivot, as Abraham says. I'm going to actually wait a minute to talk about that one, so I'll stay there. So number 6 of the 7 habits of happy people is purpose. Well, do you know what your purpose is? We've talked about a number of times that we all have the same purpose, that it's just different how we express it. So that our purpose is, in this lifetime, is to most fully express our divine potential. You're here to awaken to your divinity. I'm here to awaken to my divinity. And how I do that is what is my strengths. How you do that leads to a recognition of your strengths and what it is that is your thing. What is your thing? And I said here that flow is a thing. I've heard of flow before. Some people talk about being in the zone. I had a friend who could sit down at the piano and just play. He never had lessons. He never looked at music. And he would play, and he talked about how he would just lose sight of everything around him. He would become completely engrossed in what he was doing. And so call it the zone or call it flow. When do you get so immersed in something that it makes you happy? And you don't think about other things and you lose track of time. So if you have not something in your life that brings you into that space, then it's certainly worth pursuing. And I talked about this program that's part of University of Pennsylvania. You can actually look up their website. It's called Authentic Happiness dot blah, 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 blah. But I think if you put in University of Pennsylvania, if you do a search, University of Pennsylvania, Authentic Happiness, you will find their website. And one of the things that they offer are many, many questionnaires that help you discover your strengths, to discover where you are objectively on the happiness scale, where you are subjectively on the happiness scale. It's a playground, guys. Just go in there. It's fun. Find your flow. Many of you have probably heard of Norman Cousins. He wrote the book Anatomy of an Illness. And in that book, he tells about meeting a gentleman by the name of Pablo Casals. He was a great cellist. And just before his 90th birthday, Norman Cousins visited him in his home. And yes, he was a cellist, but he was also a pianist. And his morning routine involved sitting down at the piano first. And so Norman Cousins talked about this experience of meeting Don Pablo and how it was early in the morning and he came into the room all bent over, shuffling, his knuckles and everything kind of crunched up. And then he sat down at the piano and his fingers became unlocked and he sat up straighter and he became one with the piano. And that was his coffee, Mike. Mike comes in and is like, I saw what you posted about coffee the other day. That's why I said that. But so some of us need coffee to get started in the morning. Some of us need that early morning walk with the dog. And for this gentleman, it was sitting down to the piano, and it transformed him. He got into flow. And finally, number 7 is connecting with others. Some of us are really good at that, and some of us are not so good at that. And part of it is simply the difference between being an introvert or an extrovert. And there's nothing right or wrong with either of them. It's just a difference. And so those of us who are introverts, we tend to lose our energy when we're around people. Doesn't mean we don't like to be around people, but we need to go and have some alone time to get renewed. And extroverts are just the opposite. They like to be around people. That's where they get their energy. And yes, I know that's you. But consider the happiest times in your life. Were you all alone? No, usually our happiest times involved at least one other person. And that's what the research has indicated, that we need at least one close relationship where we share our feelings, that we share our life and our concerns with. Does not have to be a spouse. Can be a friend. Harvard University started a research program actually in 1938 that I understand continues, been going on for 8 decades or more. And some of the men were just teenagers when they started in the program, so now they're quite elderly. 700 men that they've done interviews with. Every 2 years, the men are asked to fill out a questionnaire concerning their physical health and their mental health, their work and their relationships, and their plans for retirement. Every 5 years, the researchers gather health information on the men, and every 5 years or so, men are chosen randomly for in-depth interviews on their state of mind. So what have they discovered about the secret of happiness? The director of the Harvard study summed it up in 2 sentences. He said, "Happiness is love, full stop." The quality of the men's close relationships with others was the greatest predictor of happiness in later life. The quality of their close relationships with others was the greatest predictor of happiness in later life. Everything else was a distant second. So this one actually goes very well with the one we were talking about earlier, about letting go. Because if we can't do this in relationships, it's going to be hard to get close. You cannot change other people. You love them the way they are, or you don't. You accept them the way they are, or you don't. You try to change them to fit how you want them to be. It's like trying to change a dog to become a cat, or a cat to become a horse. So may you always be happy as a cat in a box. And so it is. Let's take a moment to go a little deeper with that, just a brief meditation together. A meditation on our journey to happiness, knowing that it's not outside of us. It's a journey within. It's a daily, moment by moment practice of letting go, of choosing to look for the good, while also honoring our experiences that are difficult and challenging at times. And continuing to learn to accept ourselves and others just the way we are. In particular, being more gentle with ourselves. So let us just breathe for a moment with these new awarenesses from this morning, or maybe they're just remembering or revisiting old awarenesses. But let's sit now for a moment, just allowing them to permeate every cell of our being. Appreciating the breath as it so naturally flows in for us and flows back out. What a beautiful gift. And so as we prepare to go out into the rest of this morning, the rest of this day and this week, we commit to a greater awareness of these truths and our commitment to being happy. So with another deep breath, we bring our attention once again back to this room and the next experience. Because there is always more, isn't there?